Welcome to Heartland Arms. Today, I thought long and hard about this episode. I really did. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do or how I wanted to actually do this one, so I'm just going to go with it here. This show is going to be all about due process and why it matters. So, in recent events, there was Charlie Kirk was shot, and he passed away. And as a fellow podcaster, I don't have to know him to know that that's a tragedy. People shouldn't lose their lives for their opinions. We're going to cover that later in future episodes and see where that goes in. My problem is the aftermath here. A lot of people get upset with FBI and police not releasing information, kind of leaving the public in the dark. And they do that for a reason. They do that because of due process. And they want to make sure that the jury isn't tainted. And that evidence is, they're able to go through it and analyze it themselves and go through all of that. So, that's kind of what we're going at with here. Now, make sure you like and subscribe. This is a good time to, show your love for our channel. It helps podcasters. Charlie Kirk would probably tell you the same thing, that this isn't easy to do. It's often a lot of hours. You have to do a lot of research. You have to do a lot of, moving around. It's a thankless job, and hopefully you'll make money out of it. Most of the time it doesn't. We're a relatively new channel, and we're not monetized. So, will we get there? Do we want to get there eventually? But I have a hard rule that I don't want to be monetized because I don't want anybody to tell me what I can and can't say. And we're going to cover that in a different episode as well. More about the due process here, about the Charlie Kirk incident. So, imagine being judged before you even step in a courtroom. Because that's kind of what's happening with this, I'm going to call him a kid, who shot Charlie Kirk. Okay? I also don't condone anybody celebrating loss of life. That's not something we do here. That's not something I would say anybody needs to do, regardless of your political perspective. We don't get political. I don't care if you're right-leaning. I don't care if you're left-leaning. I'm unbiased. I'm not gonna pick a side here in this. I want the courts to be able to do what they can do. With that said, when the police, or the FBI in this case, shares every bit of information out there, well, if you've watched any other social media or anybody, you have the armchair of investigators. Everybody's investigating it. Everybody's looking at footage. Everybody's saying, that's an exit wound. How could that happen? How can this happen? And the reality is we don't know all the facts. We know a lot of facts. We have a lot of video, but there's a lot of stuff that can happen. Bullets can do a weird thing when they enter a body. And I'm not going to get into the conspiracies because there's plenty of them. And this is kind of why the FBI or police shouldn't be sharing everything with the media. That should be something that is done in courtroom. And I know you're like, hey, we want transparency. I agree, but not when it comes to a trial. Due process means that this kid should have his day in court with a impartial jury, and regardless of what you've seen, regardless of what you see out in the news, the reality here is he should be He should be innocent before proven guilty. That's the way our legal system works. You don't want a police officer to pull you over and say, yeah, you're drunk, and it's up to you to prove that you're not. The law doesn't work that way. Nor do I want it to work that way, and nor do I want a lot of people to work that way. I don't want someone to, I'm in my house and, the police come in and they're like, we think you're breaking and entering, and it's up to you to prove that you're not. Well, if no crime's committed and, you just have to be driving by, that's an infringement of our rights. I think that's what's happening with this Charlie Kirk case as well. Hasn't even gone to trial. We're already televising, that kind of stuff. Once the jury is started to going to be selected, now you're going to start having an issue of, well, now what? Is he going to get a fair shake in the court? Is he going to be able to get, people that don't know what's going on, since this has been plastered on every news station? You can't go on YouTube without seeing videos. And the celebration of life for Charlie Kirk was one of the widest and most viewed events like that in our history. And that's where I'm glad a lot of people came together for Charlie. I'm glad a lot of people are standing by his message, because I believe his message was a message of peace, a message of understanding, and I don't believe he had any hate in his heart to cause problems. I've watched him in full context of what he did. So pre-trial evidence gets leaked in all kinds of different ways. A lot of it, they're just trying to get the help from the public to find the person initially. Hey, it was look for a guy running around with a rifle. This is what he's wearing. Here's the description. Yep, we got pictures. Here's what the pictures are. My problem with a lot of that is people took those images, AI generated them, they manipulated photos, which I don't agree with. I don't like that. That can all cause problems in the courtroom later on. It's a fair trial is one of our fundamental cornerstones for our justice system. Without that, that's where we're running into issues. So what that means in terms of, if he can't find a fair trial, or when we go to jury selection and people are starting to say, hey, FBI came on TV, said that was the guy, they got the shooter, they're going in that as a prejudiced person against that. And the problem is if they've read the text messages or any of the information out there, and then that goes into the courtroom, and because we don't have the facts, we don't really know what's going on, the issue that we could run into is, what if those text messages were faked? What if the evidence that we saw in the media wasn't correct? What if new evidence comes out and changes things up? Maybe that was an exit wound. Maybe with more time they could find out what happened. And it's very important that they conduct a thorough investigation. I don't like how the crime scene was left unguarded and not taped off. Things were moved from the site, and I don't think it was handled properly. And that could come to bite them in the butt when it comes down to courtroom. Because now, I'm telling you right now, the defense attorney's already trying to come up with what he can use to declare a mistrial. What he could say to say, hey, we can't get a fair shake here. The jury's been contaminated. We can't get an impartial jury here. And even if the case goes through and then it gets appealed, the appeal could go, yeah, we didn't get a fair shake here. They violated due process. They violated this. They tampered with the jury because they gave all that information out. That's where I'm concerned. I don't want, if you did it, I want the full extent of the law to go after you. And I don't want problems, and I don't want a murderer to walk on a technicality because someone didn't cross their T's or dot their I's. There's a chain of command when it goes to evidence collection. They have to make sure that evidence wasn't lost. Evidence followed the right procedure. And if you don't do that, you can cause problems down the road. And that doesn't get justice for Charlie. I'm sorry, it doesn't. What also doesn't get justice for Charlie is putting out misinformation on how it was done or manipulating photos to give a false sense of what happened. That doesn't get justice for Charlie. That it just flat out doesn't. So if you're doing something like that, I would suggest stopping. I think the other problem that we have is there's a lot of distrust with some of what our government has done. They have done some shady things in the past. It's proven. So when the FBI agents and the police are giving us a narrative, but we see things that just don't make sense, then that's where the problem comes in. You can't, if you're going to give us the information, you have to give it all to us, because that just breeds confusion and conspiracy theories. If you need to keep that information quiet and then release it after the trial, by all means, that's probably the best way to do it. But giving us information or half information, could there have been an issue with the round fired? That's why it didn't go all. That's why it wasn't a through and through. Could something have happened where the load was not right? There's a lot of questions that I have, and I think a lot of people do too, that just don't fit what we're being told. And I'm not saying that what we're being told is wrong. What I'm saying is we're not getting the full story. And we might not be getting the full story because halfway through this, they said, oh, maybe we shouldn't say this. Then you should have thought of that before you started saying something. So due process is a big fundamental right that we have. It is a cornerstone to how we operate in the legal realm here in the United States. If you do it wrong, technicalities can let people go free. And I don't want a murderer running around the streets because you didn't do something right, or something was, for lack of a better term, half-assed. So, again, no guns on this one, just a talk. Just my opinion on kind of what happened with, the aftermath of what can happen with Charlie Kirk, and I'm a little upset with the way this was handled. So, if you like what we say, like what we do here on the channel, make sure you do like, subscribe, follow us. We're not political here. We talk about firearms. We talk about rights. We talk about hunting. But when it comes to the left, right, and politics, I don't want to get involved in that. I understand Charlie Kirk was a very political figure. He had his opinions. That's okay. I have my opinions. That's okay. You guys have your opinions. That's okay too. And I think we need to start, if we take anything, any message away from or from Charlie Kirk, let it be that. That should be a good message. And violence is never the answer. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow social media, YouTube, Spotify, all our platforms. And I hope you guys have a good rest of the week.